All right. All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm extremely excited to be here. My name is Max Wong. I co-founded IMT with Dr. Ian Lampert, and we are here at our championship round of IMT December. And this is a stunning tournament. We've had 40 teams from Vancouver to Toronto, from Hong Kong to Beijing, Miami to Los Angeles. And here we are with our final two teams, Team Pursuit and Team Gold. This is a tournament that Ian and we've made sure that it's 100% free. We want this to be the best educational purpose as possible, that we can have the best of the East, the best of the West compete at a completely virtual tournament. And here we are. Let's first start by introducing our fantastic judges who are up very late. And we'll start with Judge Ben, please.
Hi, my name's Ben. I'm a current college mock trial competitor, and just really what I'm looking for, attorneys, confidence, knowing your stuff, knowing your objections, and witnesses' believability. Do I think that you were actually there and you actually saw what took place? Looking forward to this.
Thank you, Ben. Judge Aria?
Hi, everyone. My name's Ari Alton. I did collegiate mock trial and I've been coaching for several years now. I have no strong preferences, just whatever you're doing, give it all you got. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Judge Shreya?
Hi, everyone. My name is Shreya. I currently compete in collegiate mock trial, and same goes for everyone. Just be confident in what you're doing, believe in everything that you've prepared for, and have fun with it. So yeah, so excited to see what everyone's doing.
Fantastic. Judge Timothy?
Hello, everybody. My name is Tim Huanga. I'm a senior deputy DA for Madera County, and I am specifically assigned to prosecute arson cases. So I've competed at all levels of mock trial, from high school, collegiate, and law school. I've played both attorney and witnesses. So attorneys, know how to argue, know when to object, and witnesses, I look forward to seeing what testimony comes out during the course of the trial.
Thank you so much. And finally, our presiding judge, Judge Stephen, please. Oh, you're muted, sir.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. My name is Stephen Noodleman. I have never competed in collegiate mock trial or high school mock trial. However, I am a litigation attorney in the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area. I've been practicing mainly in the area of construction litigation for the past almost 30 years. I have judged mock trial for AMTA. I've judged regional orcs, all sorts of things for about the past 10 years. So I've seen quite a variety of competitions. I enjoy it. I think it's a great educational opportunity, and hopefully this is an enjoyable trial, as many of them I've seen in the past.
Thank you so much. All right. Like all the judges said, I hope that everybody has fun. Best of luck. And Judge Stephen, I'll pass the floor to you. Thank you.
Okay. Well, let's call a case of Tilly versus Tanks. Again, my name is Judge Noodleman, and if we could have the attorneys please enter your appearances, starting with the prosecution.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Krystal Deng, and I, alongside my co-counsel Jiachen,
Good evening, Your Honor.
Good evening.
represent the prosecution in today's case.
Okay, and if we could get the appearances for the defense.
Good evening, Your Honor, and members of the jury. My name is Audrey Ma, and today I'm joined by my colleague, Christiana Garcia.
Hello, Your Honor. Sorry, I'm not actually going to be on the beach today, but nonetheless, good morning.
Okay.
And we're here on behalf of Jimmie Tanks in today's trial.
Okay, very well. Let's start with the prosecution. Do you have any preliminary matters you wish to address?
Yes, Your Honor. First, we'd like to invoke Midland Rules 615 and 603, constructively swearing in and sequestering all witnesses except party representatives.
Okay, and is there a party representative on behalf of the prosecution?
No, Your Honor. The prosecution does not have a party representative.
Okay, any other preliminary matters from the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor. Second, we'd like to clarify Your Honor's preferences for screen sharing. Should we request to screen share documents or simply state for the record that we're screen sharing?
Yeah, I kind of like it when you do it and announce that you're doing it. You don't need to ask advance permission if that's what you're asking.
All right. Last, we'd like to know your preferences on striking from the record after objections. Should we assume it's automatically stricken or should we ask each time?
I've learned in the legal business long ago, you never assume. So if you want something stricken, please make the request.
Yes, Your Honor. With that, the prosecution is ready to proceed to opening statements.
Okay, before we do that, let's turn to the defense and see if they have any preliminary matters they wish to bring up.
Your Honor, just one. The defense identifies Jimmie Tanks as our party representative for today's trial.
Okay, and with that, Ms. Deng, let's hear your opening statement.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Oh, yes, please proceed.
May it please the court. Her fury fueled the fire. In the early hours of July 2nd, Bertie Darrow wakes up. Her house in flames, practically destroyed in just a few moments. She struggles to escape. She's breathing in smoke. She barely makes it out alive before she can call the first responders. As she watches everything she owned burn. But who fueled this fire? Because you're gonna learn it wasn't an accident. It was none other than the defendant, Jimmie Tanks. Today, the state charges the defendant with first-degree arson and attempted first-degree murder. As a prosecution, we hold the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And while that is a high burden of proof, reasonable doubt has to be reasonable. Members of the jury, this means the defense has to prove to you that Jimmie Tanks didn't have the fury or the fuel. But today, we're going to show you just how Jimmie Tanks committed this crime. Her fury, her fuel, and the fire. First, let's talk about her fury. You're going to hear from Billy Huxley in just a few moments' time how the defendant has a personal vendetta against Bertie Darrow. You're going to hear how Jimmie Tanks said she was willing to do anything to make Bertie Darrow suffer, to destroy Bertie Darrow's life. That Bertie Darrow has this coming for her. You're going to hear that in May 2021, the defendant drew a photo of a 2-story burning house with the date July 1st. The same date that 3 years later, Bertie Darrow's house lit up in flames. You're going to see that photo later in trial today, and you're going to learn that this wasn't some kind of lucky coincidence. This was planned. Second, her fuel. You'll also learn that the defendant consulted someone else for help. A master arsonist in jail who told her exactly what she needed to know to commit this crime. Where the target lived, and to pour gasoline before it got dark. You're gonna learn that Jimmie Tanks only lived 20 minutes from Miss Darrow's house. And you're gonna learn that Jimmie Tanks was seen on Miss Darrow's security cameras, someone with the very same build as Jimmie Tanks, near her home on the same day. And Dr. Blaze is gonna tell you that gasoline was the cause of this fire. Third, the fire. You're going to learn that the defendant was caught throwing out the very substance that started the fire. So at the end of today's trial, My co-counsel Jiachen will come before you and ask you to find the defendant guilty. But before that happens today, we ask you to consider the defendant's fury, her fuel, and the fire. Find him guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Deng. Okay, and can we now hear from the defense?
Certainly, Your Honor. She needed funds, so she started a fire. $225,000. That's the number staring Bertie Darrow in the face. She's looking at her debt. Debt she can't pay. Folks, she's a high school gym teacher, not a millionaire, and she's desperate. And it's getting worse. She tried to gamble her way out of it and failed. Tried to get more loans and failed. And now she's gonna lose the building she owns. Today you'll learn her desperation turn to deceit. The day she took a pen in one hand and signed an insurance policy. Today we're gonna show you that policy. And you'll see she didn't just earn, she would gain almost $1 million if her home bursted into flames. Folks, she needed funds. So you'll learn on July 1st, 2022, she set fire to her house to deceive the insurance company and get them. So what does Ms. Tanks have to do with this? You'll learn the answer to that question today is nothing. Ms. Tanks was just the person Miss Darrow hated enough to make her scapegoat. That's why we're all sitting in trial today. And Miss Darrow almost got away with her lies. Today, the state has charged Ms. Tanks with 2 things: attempted arson and first-degree arson and attempted first-degree murder. And as the state, they came into this courtroom with a burden to prove Ms. Tanks' guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Folks, that means if there's a possibility Miss Darrow, not Miss Tanks, started that fire, Miss Tanks is not guilty. And while we don't have to prove anything today, we're going to show you this case boils down to 2 things: a woman who needed funds and the fire she started. First, a woman who needed funds. An insurance investigator will tell you Ms. Tanks was $225,000 in debt. You'll see that insurance policy up close and personal. That she wouldn't just gain almost $1 million if her home turned into flames. So the second point is the fire she started. Because both sides agree there was a fire. But the fuel? Well, Miss Deng got it wrong. It's not gasoline, it's paint thinner. And you'll learn from the experts today that paint thinner was the cause. And you'll hear from a storekeeper, and they'll show you a receipt of Miss Darrow buying large amounts of this highly flammable liquid just weeks before the fire. She needed funds, so she started a fire. And today the state will tell you Miss Tanks is a convicted criminal. She is. They'll say she dislikes Miss Darrow, and she does. But folks, the law tells you none of that matters because Miss Tanks is innocent unless proven guilty. And Bertie Darrow. Well, Bertie Darrow tried to use this innocent woman as her get out of jail free card. So by the end of today's trial, when all the cards are on the table, we'll ask you to be members of true justice. Find Miss Tanks not guilty. Because Bertie Darrow needed fun. So she started a fire. I appreciate your time, folks.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Okay, let's proceed with the prosecution. Okay, Ms. Deng, please call your first witness.
The prosecution calls Billy Huxley to the stand. May I proceed?
Please proceed.
Good evening. What's your name and occupation?
Howdy, folks. I'm Billy Huxley. I'm a security guard at the county Huxley. That's what we in the Wild West call the jail.
How'd you start working there?
It's a long story. My folks and I lived on the Soul Ranch out west, but I didn't want to live in their basement anymore, and I got real tired of smelling like leather all the time. I wanted to branch out and explore the world, like Woody in Toy Story 4. That's me, but with old Willow.
Ma'am, does this mean you're staying in Willow permanently?
Yes, I am. I even got a job and everything. I ought to be honest, ma'am. It was a saloon downtown that really convinced me to stay. Man, they got the best biscuits and gravy in all of Tilly.
Miss Huxley, where do you work?
I used to work at Aberdeen High School as a security guard, but a kid caught me smoking marijuana, and then I got fired and faced a misdemeanor charge. I work at the Calaboose now. That's just another way we Western folks say jail.
What happened to your misdemeanor, ma'am?
I went to a rehab program and I worked up the ranks as a calaboose guard. I was pretty angry at first, but now I realize that it really transformed my life and inspired me to be a better person.
Are you sober now?
Yes, ma'am. I've been clean since September of 2020, and I owe it all to the rehab program for keeping me clean. The rehab center made me realize that I should try to live life as Woody, be adventurous and have a friend in others. And of course, appreciate my cowgirl culture.
Miss Huxley, I want to rewind and talk about the defendant. Do you know Miss Tanks?
Yeah, she was a student at Aberdeen High School. She's the one who got me fired a few years ago, but funny enough, I was the one who saw her in the Who Scout. I saw her on March 1st, 2021. That was my first official day on the job, and she was one of the new inmates.
And to clarify for everyone, why are you here today?
Well, other than the fact that I do get to dress in my best bib and tucker, I'm here to testify to y'all about what I heard Jimmie Tanks say about Bertie Darrow and the fire.
What did Jimmie Tanks say about Bertie Darrow?
Tanks had a real hissy fit. She said that she'd stolen something from a shop and Darrow turned her into the police. She said that Darrow destroyed her life. She looked furious.
Ma'am, you're telling me Tanks accused Darrow of destroying her life? How could you tell Miss Tanks was furious?
Well, she said that Darrow had it coming for him, and that she'd show Darrow what true fire was, and that she was willing to do whatever it took to make sure that Bertie Darrow suffers. Oh boy, she was madder than an old wet hen.
And when did he tell you this?
This was March 9th, 2021, the first time I talked to her in prison.
Did you ever see the defendant again in prison?
Yes, ma'am. Quite frequently, too, since I monitored her group. I used to overhear her conversations, and she was always rambling about a fire or gasoline or some related thing.
I want to move on and talk about that gasoline. Do you recall any of Tanks's conversations?
Yes, ma'am. About a week later, on March 16th, Tanks was talking to Alex Leonard, this ruffian who's doing 40 years for malicious arson.
And during that conversation between Tanks and a convicted arsonist, what were they saying?
Objection, lack of foundation.
What's the response to that, Ms. Deng?
Sorry, could you expand on which part was lack of foundation?
Ms. Ma, what's the specific objection? What is the lack of foundation for what?
Lack of foundation for how Billy Huxley knew about Alex Leonard and his sentence.
Okay. Ms. Deng?
Your Honor, I'm about to proffer, if I'm allowed to proffer. Miss Huxley's gonna tell you how everyone in jail kind of knew about each other's sentences and how everyone in jail kind of just, how this kind of news traveled around the jail.
Okay, but the problem is that you are telling us that you're going to lay the foundation, but you have not laid the foundation. So the objection is sustained.
Yes, Your Honor.
Miss Huxley, how do you know Mr. Leonard?
Oh, well, I mean, Leonard is pretty well known in the jail, and a lot of the sentences travel around, and yeah, a lot of people hear each other's sentences.
So, going back to my original question, during that conversation between Tanks and a convicted arsonist, what were they saying?
This arsonist fella, Leonard, he said that Tanks would need to know where exactly.
Objection on the grounds of hearsay.
Ms. Deng?
Yes, Your Honor. This statement is not hearsay because it's not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, but rather its effect on the listener. We're not saying that whatever Tanks Leonard is saying is true, but we're offering this to show that this influenced Miss Tanks to do something later.
Well, let's before we go further, let's hear what the testimony was going to be, because we didn't kind of hear it. It got cut off. Ms. Huxley, what were you going to say in response to Ms. Deng?
I was gonna say that Leonard was telling Tanks that they'd have to know exactly where the target lived, and that Tanks needed time to pour the good stuff around the place once it got dark, so that things could go as planned.
Okay, Ms. Ma, why is that not here? What's your response to Ms. Deng, who said that that's being offered for the effect on the listener as opposed to the truth value?
The opposing counsel can't specify a specific effect that's going to be happening after this statement. So there's no way that they can prove that Jimmie Tanks did something after this statement that was directly connected to it.
Ms. Deng, what do you have to say about that?
Your Honor, if I may, what the prosecution is trying to offer is not that what Leonard said had to be true, but rather that this is later going to influence Miss Tanks to do something, commit the crime.
Yeah, but the problem, Ms. Deng, is based on what the witness testified. It sounds as if there's truth value for that statement. So the objection is going to be sustained.
Yes, Your Honor.
Miss Huxley, did you hear Tanks say anything?
Yes, I did. Tank said that she'd look into paint thinner or gasoline when the time was right, but she stopped talking when she saw me.
So apart from Tanks saying she'd look into gasoline, did you see any other suspicious behavior?
Yes, I did. On May 13th, 2021, Tanks was in a group therapy session and I was monitoring closely. The inmates were given journals, and Tanks was sure roping in the work on hers.
Did you see anyone else writing in that journal?
No, I was watching the group the whole session, and Tanks was the only one scribbling away like Leonardo DiCaprio. No, Leonardo da Vinci.
What was Tanks writing in his journal?
I flipped through a few pages and I saw her drawing a two-story house on fire.
I want to talk about that fire Miss Tanks drew. Your Honor, let the record reflect that my co-counsel will be sharing his screen with what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 10. Your Honor, it looks like we're going through some technical difficulties.
Okay, straighten them out. That's okay.
There we go. Your Honor, can you see exhibit number 10?
I can, yes.
All right. Miss Huxley, do you recognize this photo?
Yes, I do. It's a Tanks drawing that I was referring to.
Is it a true and accurate photo?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Can you describe this drawing for the members of the jury?
Sure, I can. It's got Tanks initials, JT. There's flames everywhere on the ground and in the two-story house.
And what's in the upper left corner?
There seems to be 2 dates.
Objection, Your Honor?
What's the basis for the objection?
Permission to move this exhibit into evidence before we start examining it?
Well, I thought that there was some, this is an identification issue. Go ahead, Ms. Deng, what's your response to that?
Your Honor, I'm just trying to lay some foundation as to what this exhibit is, but I'm happy to move it into evidence right now.
Okay, that's up to you. Okay, are there any objections, Ms. Ma?
Yes, Your Honor. Objection under Rule 403, more prejudicial than probative.
Okay, and what is the argument there?
We don't know whose house this is, and we don't have any evidence of that, and hence this is inflaming the passions of the jury and has little probative value.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Sure, go ahead, Ms. Deng.
Your Honor, Exhibit 10 is extremely probative because it goes to show Miss Tanks' planning of her crime that she's going to commit 3 years later. 3 years later, she's going to burn a 2-story house down, and that is why this exhibit has a lot of probative value.
Ms. Ma, what's the response to that?
Your Honor, we still don't know whose house this is and how it's related to this case. And therefore, since this is a house that Jimmie Tanks drew, but we don't know whose house it is specifically, it's inflaming the passions of the jury.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Deng.
Your Honor, what I was going to ask the witness before moving this exhibit into evidence was that you can see 2 dates in the top left corner, one of them being July 1st. And you'll learn that Miss Tanks burned Bertie Darrow's house down on July 1st. This is the direct correlation between this drawing and the crime that Miss Tanks committed.
What do you say about that, Ms. Ma?
Your Honor, this is still inflaming the jury because we're seeing this house on fire. We can hear about this house on direct examination, but actually seeing this drawing can be inflammatory to the passions of the jury.
Your Honor, may I respond just one more time?
Yeah, I'll hear the response one more time. Go ahead.
Your Honor, this isn't going to inflame the members of the jury because this is a drawing, not a photo. The fire is quite literally done with pens or markers. This isn't going to inflame the jury or invoke any sadness for the defendant or the victim because it's a drawing of a house. It's a drawing again.
Yeah, the problem is, Ma, and your objection is going to be overruled, is under Rule 403, the probative value has to be substantially outweighed by the prejudicial effect, and nothing that you've argued other than that this is a drawing. You're by making the argument under Rule 403, you're conceding that this drawing is relevant. That being said, I don't see this be substantially outweighed by prejudicial effect. So therefore, it's admitted. The objection is overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Huxley, or Your Honor, the prosecution moves to enter Exhibit 10 into evidence again?
Well, I thought I already admitted it, so I'm not sure what you're moving. meaning the objection was overruled and therefore Exhibit 10 has been admitted into evidence.
Yes, Your Honor.
Please
Miss
proceed.
Huxley. Yes, Your Honor. Miss Huxley, what's in the upper left corner of this exhibit?
There seems to be two dates. The first one is July 1st, 202 question mark, and the second one is February 26th, 2021.
Do you know what happened on July 1st?
Yeah, Bertie Darrow's house burned down on July 1st. Bless her heart.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, Ms. Ma, cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes, please proceed.
Good evening, Miss Huxley.
Howdy, ma'am.
Now let's see if Jimmie Tanks ever gave you a reason to hold a grudge against her. You used to be a high school security guard under Mr. Tank at Mrs. Tank's school, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And just like courtrooms, schools have rules, don't they?
Yes, they do.
And that no drug usage rule, well, you broke it because you were addicted to marijuana, right?
Yes, unfortunately I did, but luckily I've gotten over it all thanks to the rehab center.
I'm glad to hear that. And Miss Huxley, on one of your smoke breaks, a student, aka Miss Tanks, caught you getting high, right?
Yes, that's right.
You desperately wanted her to mind her own business and shut up, right?
I mean, I was really worried about losing my job, yes.
But she didn't shut up. She did the opposite, didn't she?
I mean, yeah, I guess you could say that.
She told your principal about your drug usage.
Yes, she did.
And you were fired on the spot?
Yes, that's correct.
In fact, you weren't only fired, but charged with a misdemeanor, weren't you?
I was.
A misdemeanor that will be on your record for the rest of your life.
Yes, I believe that's true.
And you were filled with anger about this, weren't you?
I mean, yeah, at the time I was really upset, I lost my job and everything, but I mean, in the end, I guess it all worked out.
And you would say that all of this happened because that little narc Jimmie Tanks couldn't keep a secret, right?
Yeah, that narc, like a narcissist, I believe it's called a narcissistic officer. It's someone who just deals with drug usage. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'm grateful for Jimmie Tanks after all this.
Well, it's no secret that you claimed a moment ago Miss Tanks said some choice words while in jail. Let's take a moment to consider whether there's any proof Miss Tanks ever said these things. You claim that she said, "One day I'll show Miss Darrow what true fire looks like. And I'll do whatever it takes to make sure Bertie Darrow suffers."
Yes, that's what I heard her say.
And after you supposedly heard these things, you must have documented them in a notebook or something, right?
No, I hadn't thought to at the time.
So you're remembering these quotes verbatim from 3 years ago.
I mean, yeah, they kind of stood out to me.
And that aside, but surely you reported Miss Tanks to your supervisor, right?
Unfortunately, no, I hadn't. I mean, I thought prison would maybe help Miss Tank. I mean, yeah, help Miss Tanks.
And Miss Huxley, jails have security cameras everywhere, don't they?
Yeah, I believe most do.
But ma'am, you didn't show us a single piece of security footage of Miss Tanks ever making those threats, did you?
Objection, Your
No.
Honor. Improper expert opinion. May I elaborate?
Sure.
Your Honor, Miss Huxley is just a jail guard. We don't know if that means this includes being able to see and request and show security footage. We know that she just started out at her job So we don't, and the defense hasn't laid any foundation as to how Miss Huxley could have access to this footage.
Okay, Ms. Ma, what do you say about all that?
Your Honor, this is cross-examination. If Miss Huxley doesn't have access to these or she doesn't know where they are, she's free to say that she doesn't have them.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Ms. Deng, I see it, that there's nothing improper. If the witness doesn't know or the witness doesn't have access, I think it's a simple answer on her part. The objection is overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, may I proceed?
Please proceed.
But Miss Huxley, you didn't show us any security footage of Miss Tanks ever making those threats, did you?
No, I mean, I didn't think it would be necessary at the time.
Now, Miss Huxley, let's figure out if you would do whatever it takes to make sure Jimmie Tanks suffers. There's a possibility Miss Tanks can get sent to jail if she's convicted today, right?
Yes, I believe there is.
And Willow County Jail is a place where you have loads of connections, don't you?
I mean, yeah, I do. I mean, I help in the jail, so yes.
And if Miss Tanks ended up at Willow County Jail, you could use these connections to make her life miserable, couldn't you?
I mean, I could, but of course I wouldn't.
You could make that narc Jimmie Tanks' life miserable, right?
Once again, I could, but I don't know if I would do that.
Respectfully, Miss Huxley, I wasn't asking if you would make her life miserable. I was asking if you could.
Yes, it's possible.
Now, today, you're actively helping these prosecutors, aren't you?
Yes, I guess so.
To be clear, you weren't told to be here by Judge Noodleman, right?
No, I wasn't.
And Miss Deng didn't force you to take the stand, right?
No, she didn't.
Today, you volunteered to testify against the woman that you think deserves to be put in her place.
I mean, I just want to help settle the case with any information I have, so yes.
Thank you, Miss Huxley. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ma. Any redirect examination, Ms. Deng?
No redirect, Your Honor. Can this witness step down?
Yes, Ms. Huxley, you're excused. Thank you. Does the prosecution have any more witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The state now calls Dr. Blaze to the stand.
Okay, please proceed, Ms. Xu.
Yes, Your Honor. Good evening, sir. Can you please introduce yourself to the court?
Good evening. My name is Dr. Harley Blaze, and I am the lead fire marshal of Palm Grove.
Doctor, can you tell us the job of a fire marshal?
A fire marshal oversees fire investigations, provides expert analysis on fire-related incidents, and, in my case, has the authority to make arrests based on findings.
I'd like to talk about what qualifies you for this job. Where did you go to school?
I received my bachelor's degree in engineering from Edgewood College and my PhD in chemistry from the University of Wisconsin. I am also a certified fire investigator.
And what experiences do you have working as a fire investigator?
I've completed over 300 hours of specialized training through the ATF Certified Fire Investigator Program, investigated hundreds of cases, authored technical reports, and testified in courts multiple times.
And how are you involved in today's case specifically?
I was called to investigate the fire at Bertie Darrow's residence, where I examined the scene, analyzed evidence, and conducted interviews, leading to my conclusions about the fire's cause and origin.
Now, I want to start with the background of the investigation. What method did you use to investigate?
I used the standard fire investigation methodology, which includes analyzing burn patterns, collecting fire debris samples, and conducting chemical analysis through a process known as chromatography.
Did you reliably apply your method today?
Yes, I followed all established protocols and standards in the investigation to ensure the results were accurate and reliable.
Your Honor, pursuant to the pretrial order, the court already approved Dr. Blaze as an expert in fire investigations before today's trial.
Okay.
Your Honor, pursuant to pretrial ruling George v. Heron, 2024, and no objections.
Yeah, I'm not sure I followed that, but okay, meaning it's okay. I understand the rules. So go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. Doctor, I want to begin from the start of the investigation. What evidence were you able to collect?
I relied on burn patterns I collected at the scene and a chromatography analysis of samples collected from the scene.
And how were you able to collect the samples?
Well, I first began by photographing the samples, and then I collected the fire debris using clean tools and airtight containers, labeled and stored the evidence properly, and conducted laboratory testing to analyze the sample.
Now, what were you able to find in the samples?
I found the presence of a liquid in the samples, gasoline.
And doctor, how were you able to determine that?
Through chromatography testing, I compared the hydrocarbons in the fire debris samples to a reference chromatograph of gasoline. The results were identical, confirming the presence of gasoline.
And can you further explain to us how the chromatography process worked?
Certainly. I have, in fact, prepared a demonstrative to help the gentlemen and ladies of the jury to understand better what chromatography testing is about.
Your Honor, stating for the record, the doctor will now be showing his demo to the jury.
Okay,
Go ahead, doctor.
This has been reviewed by the other side at your captain meeting?
Yes, Your Honor,
Yes.
no objections.
Okay, please proceed.
Yes. Go ahead, doctor. Can you show us how your demo works?
Certainly. So imagine this blot of ink right here on this piece of chromatography paper represents the source of liquid evidence. And this bowl of water represents the fire debris we are analyzing. Just going to take the paper, put it into the bowl. When the ink spills, as it did here, it mixes into the water, just like a liquid accelerant would mix with fire debris. To figure out exactly what type of ink is spilled, I could extract it from the water and analyze it further.
Doctor, how were you able to identify if two liquids are in fact the same?
Well, that's where chromatography comes in. Think of the chromatography as a scientific tool that separates and identifies all the tiny ingredients of this spilled ink. The chromatography part separates the compounds in the ink, just like if we separated the different compounds that make up the ink here. We then analyze how much of each compound is present in the solution.
Doctor, when you compare the analysis of the sample to the analysis of gasoline, what were you able to find?
The chemical profiles matched exactly.
Doctor, what did you do after you confirmed that?
I interviewed the homeowner, Bertie Darrow, to gather additional information about the fire and potential suspects.
I want to talk about the outcome of that interview. Now, what, if anything, did Miss Darrow tell you?
Darrow stated they had seen a shadowy figure near their home earlier that evening carrying containers. They suspected it was Jimmie Tanks, someone with whom they had had a hostile.
Objection. A lack of foundation may be heard.
Sure, Ms. Garcia, go ahead.
Your Honor, up to this point, we haven't heard any foundation as to how Miss Bertie Darrow came to the conclusion that it was in fact Miss Tanks when it was a black shadowy figure. We would ask that that foundation is laid on the record.
Mr. Xu, what do you have to say about that?
Your Honor, the witness simply relaying a statement made by Miss Darrow, and he relied on that statement in order to form his conclusion pursuant to Rule 703. Your Honor, at present, the witness is only testifying to a statement he collected, and that is an issue of weight, not admissibility.
Yeah, I don't see it, Ms. Garcia. The objection is overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed, Mr. Xu.
Yes, Your Honor. Doctor, can you tell us again what Miss Darrow said about the fire?
Of course. Darrow stated they had seen a shadowy figure near their residence earlier that evening carrying containers. They suspected it was Jimmie Tanks, someone with whom Darrow has had a hostile history with.
And did Miss Darrow show you any proof to confirm her suspicion?
She did show me camera footage, security camera footage from her house.
And what did the camera footage show?
There was an individual in the footage with the same height and body shape as Tanks.
What did you do afterwards?
I then left Darrow's residence and arrived at Tanks' residence on the same night.
Now, about what time did you get to the defendant's residence?
About 20 minutes after I left Bertie Darrow's residence, about 12:50, I'd say, 12:50 a.m. The following morning.
And what was the defendant doing when you got there?
Tank was in the backyard disposing of the gasoline. They were pouring it into a waste container of sorts.
Objection. As to lack of foundation, may I be heard?
Sure.
Your Honor, up to this point, there has been no foundation laid that what Miss Tanks was pouring out was gasoline.
Okay, what do you say about that, Mr. Xu?
Your Honor, the doctor conducted his analysis and he was able to confirm it as gasoline. That material was confirmed as part of his experiment we discussed earlier.
Your Honor, may I be heard?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Garcia.
Your Honor, that'd be a great response if it came from the witness and not Mr. Shield. We haven't heard any foundation from this witness that he tested and ran those tests and it was gasoline. Your Honor, that foundation is simply lacking.
Yeah, on this point, I do agree with Ms. Garcia. That objection sustained.
Permission to strike?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, that testimony is stricken and the jury will disregard it.
Certainly.
And Dr. Blaze, can you tell us if you confirmed the material the defendant was pouring?
Yeah, I took the material that was poured out, conducted the chromatography testing I mentioned earlier, and the results that came back showed it was gasoline.
And what was the defendant pouring the gasoline into?
Some sort of waste container.
And Doctor, what did you do after you saw the defendant pour gasoline into a waste container?
I arrested Tanks and Mirandized him.
Okay,
Thank
it
you,
appears
Dr.
that you're out of time, Mr. Xu. Thank you very much. Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Hello, Dr. Blaze.
Evening.
Let's see if your investigation covered all the bases. Like you said a moment ago, you gathered evidence from the remainder of Miss Darrow's house and ran that GCMS test.
Correct.
Now, let's say I take this water bottle. I look at the surface area. the bottom and top. But sir, I never unscrew this lid. It's reasonable to say I couldn't know what liquid is inside, right?
Counsel, that might work for water bottles, but in fire investigations, external evidence like burn patterns and accelerant residue are directly linked to the cause. But if you're talking about just this water bottle, that's a yes to your question.
So that's a yes to my question. I couldn't tell what liquid is inside. Sir, it could be water, soda, but I wouldn't know because I didn't check inside the water bottle, right?
Yes,
Your
Mr. Shu,
Honor.
what is the basis for your objection?
403 on misleading the jury. May I explain?
Sure.
Your Honor, the witness just clarified how a water bottle is completely different from an arson investigation. Now, Ms. Garcia's example here is misleading the jury because it is talking about something that does not represent what happened. If she wants to challenge the evidence or the investigation, she can focus on the facts instead of going with a far-fetched analogy.
Okay,
Your Honor,
Ms.
may I be heard?
Garcia?
Your Honor, if we look back at Rule 403, evidence has to be substantially more misleading than probative. I'm using this water bottle as an analogy to explain what Dr. Blaze failed to investigate. Surely an analogy that's simple.
That you need not argue that anymore, Ms. Garcia. I agree with you. According to Rule 403, there has to be substantially outweighed. Number one, Mr. Shu, and number two is you have your chance. If you disagree with what is being done here, you have an opportunity to take redirect examination if you'd like. So, but at this point, your objection is overruled.
Yes, Your
Now,
Honor.
sir, like I said a moment ago, it's reasonable to say I don't know what liquid is inside because I didn't check the bottle, right?
For a water bottle, correct.
Sir, similarly, when you investigated Miss Darrow's house, you only gathered evidence from the perimeter of the building, right?
Correct. That evidence was sufficient.
Sir, the evidence came from the exterior walls,
Correct.
the backyard.
That is correct.
Let's make this clear. You never went inside the house and gathered samples, right?
Correct. The evidence on the walls and in the backyard were sufficient.
Sir, respectfully, that wasn't my question. My question was, you never went inside the house and gathered samples, yes or no?
Yes, I didn't, because the evidence I collected was sufficient.
And since you didn't gather samples from the interior, you weren't able to run tests on that evidence, were you?
Correct. I ran tests on the evidence collected on the outside of the house.
In other words, you never ran tests on the materials from the inside of the house, yes or no?
Correct.
Doctor, you can't say whether there was, for example, paint thinner on the interior walls, right?
Correct, because my testings on the evidence I collected reviewed gasoline.
Sir, let's make this clear. You only tested things from the exterior of the home, right?
Correct, and they provided me with reasonable evidence and analysis to formulate conclusions.
So that's a yes to my question. You only gathered evidence from the exterior of the building. Well, let's take a moment and consider whether the evidence pointing to Mr. Tanks is reliable. On the night of the fire, like you said a moment ago, Miss Darrow claimed she saw a shadowy figure near her house.
That is correct.
You think it might be Miss Tanks?
It could have been.
Sir, you just said it could have been. Truth is, you can't be sure.
That is correct.
You can't be sure because the security footage of the suspect was rendered indistinguishable, right?
Aside for the general build of the individual, correct.
Sir, that indistinguishable figure was holding two large containers.
Correct.
Similar to the container of gasoline Miss Tanks owned.
And similar to the ones I found at Mr. Tank's house, correct.
Similar to the container you found that you deemed was all you needed before arresting him, yes or no?
No, the counsel, I didn't deem only a gasoline container necessary for arresting Tanks. Based on all the analysis I did and all the evidence I collected, the gasoline container I found was confirmation to arrest Tanks, not all I relied on.
Sir, I appreciate that yes at the beginning of your answer. If you could save that explanation for Mr. Shu on redirect, that'd be great. Moving forward, yes or no? You can say, Doctor, gasoline is easy to come by.
Correct.
You'd agree if I left this courtroom, got in my car, drove to a gas station right now, I could probably buy some.
You could.
Heck, anyone in this courtroom could do the same.
Correct, but you won't find a lot of people typically buying giant gas containers.
Sir, you're aware on the 4th of July, a lot of people like to barbecue.
Correct?
That's around the time you found Miss Tanks with a tank of gasoline, right?
It is my understanding that gasoline is used for cars, not barbecue. Propane is used to power barbecue grills, not gasoline.
Well, sir, you'd agree with me that merely owning gasoline doesn't make someone an arsonist.
That is correct.
Well, sir, after you arrested Miss Tanks, it's true, you decided to investigate only her, right?
Correct.
Well, it's reasonable to say, if I focus solely on this white wall, turn my back on you, I might miss something to do, right?
Again, yes, but investigating a fire is not like facing a wall and turning your back on me.
Sir, respectfully, that wasn't my question. My question was, it's reasonable to say, if I turn my back on you, I miss something you do. Yes or no?
Reasonable in this case, correct.
Sir, let's see if it's reasonable to say you miss Miss Darrow's need for funds because you were focusing on the wrong things. It's true Miss Darrow had almost $1 million insurance policy protecting her home from fires.
Correct.
Sir, you didn't look into the possibility Miss Darrow set her house on fire for funds.
Correct. I am not an expert in insurance policies and procedures. Therefore, I did not review her funds. That is a yes to your question.
Sir, you can't say that you looked into her bank records.
Correct.
You can't say if she was in debt.
Correct.
You can't tell these jurors if she had a gambling addiction.
Correct. I'm here to investigate fires, not financial records of individuals.
Sir, I keep hearing you say you're not an expert in financial investigation. Sir, you're aware that despite having zero expertise in that field, you didn't make an effort to find someone who was to investigate the funds further, did you?
Correct, because the evidence I had was sufficient enough to tell me Miss Tanks was the culprit. But no, I did not review any evidence outside what was collected.
In other words, you came to your conclusion after not looking into the funds whatsoever. Yes or no?
Yes, I came to my conclusions after reviewing the evidence collected at the scene.
Sir, that's a yes to my question. You didn't look into the funds.
Correct.
Thank you, Dr. Blaze. I'll let you get back to your fires. Your Honor, at this time, no further questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Garcia. Mr. Shu, any redirect examination?
Your Honor, seeing as time has elapsed for the state.
Oh,
no
okay,
redirect.
there is no time for redirect examination. I'm with you, Mr. Shu. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Dr. Blaze. You're excused. Does the prosecution have any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor, the state rests our case in chief.
Okay, so is at this point we should take a 5-minute break? Is that acceptable for everybody?
Your Honor, that's up to you. We're ready to keep rolling with this, but if you would like a break, we're fine with
Well, yeah,
that.
I think customarily they take a 5-minute break, so we'll stick to the custom. Is that okay with you, Mr. Shu?
Yes, Your Honor, it is.
Okay, very good. So we will resume at 8 minutes after the hour. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is everybody back?
Yes, Your Honor, the prosecution is ready to proceed.
Let's see if we can hear from the defense. Just to confirm, the defense is not yet back?
The defense is ready to get this trial on the road.
Oh, good. Okay, so good. Then let's have the defense call its first witness.
The defense would like to call Mr. Jordan Parks to the stand.
Okay.
Give us one moment. I apologize. Our witness for Parks is actually going to be joining us from the airport today, so
Okay.
see if we can get him on screen. Daniel, are you there? Might have accidentally. Let's see. Mr. Parks?
Ms. Moff, you need another moment to go offline and check in on your witness. That's okay.
Your Honor, we ask for the court's indulgence. As you know, we can't start the trial without our witness. My co-counsel will be calling him to see if we can get him back online.
Okay, it's not a problem. We're here.
Yes, Your Honor. There he is. Mr. Parks?
Yeah, I'm here. Oh, shoot. Hey, stop walking over here. I'm on a Zoom. Sorry, can you see me?
Yes, Mr. Parks. We can see you just fine. Good evening, sir.
Good late evening. I had a whole joke planned out about calling in from sunny, humid Florida, but that didn't work out as it's more like dark freezing and I'm in Tennessee right now. Seriously, a few days off and I've got a trial. That's out my luck. But good evening nonetheless.
I appreciate you joining us even though you're on vacation. Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Sure, my name's Jordan Parks. Like Air Jordan, National Parks, that kind of parks.
And where are you from?
Albany. There wasn't enough room for my ma and me in that one horse city. Naturally, that meant I had to go. Who knows? If I like Florida, I might just pack it up. Mickey Mouse is around the corner.
What do you do for a living?
Well, growing up, my ma always told me, Jordan, you have two options for work. You can be a doctor or you can be a disappointment. And well, this disappointment works at a hardware store called Nuts and Bolts.
Have you always worked there?
Nah, I moved to Willow a few months back, but let me tell you, when I moved, it was real nice. Just like upstate New York, quiet, real great air. I'm lying to you, don't go there. The air is awful. But you can buy a house for the price of a New York parking spot. It's great.
And why are you in court today?
Well, see, I helped Mr. Tanks and even Miss Darrow, what we call in the store, a couple of repeat customers with a few sales.
Mr. Parks, let's walk through those sales one at a time. When did you first help them?
Well, it was a while back, June 2nd, 2024. Mr. Tanks came in looking for, well, equipment to go sleep in the woods, fight trash pandas, you can fight bears. I mean, it's not my cup of tea, but who am I to judge?
And why do you say he was going camping?
Well, she needed some rope, cloth, gasoline, and a flag. That's camping equipment.
Now let's move on to the second meeting. When was that?
Well, I remember it was July 25th, 2024. About 2 months later, and Bertie Darrow came in to buy equipment for repainting the house. He was complaining, sort of telling me to hurry up, then telling me to go real touchy. It reminded me of something terrible. My apologies. Yep, I've got. Sorry, where was I?
Mr. Parks, when was the second meeting?
Oh yeah, sorry. Like I said, Bertie Darrow came in, all touchy, telling me to hurry up, go away. Like I didn't know what to do. It reminded me of something really awful from my childhood. My mother. But
And
they were there to paint their house.
my apologies, Mr. Parks.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm real good at interrupting people, I guess.
Now, what did Bertie Darrow buy?
Some paint thinner, paint brushes, and a fire extinguisher.
Is this normal?
Not at all. Bertie Darrow bought twice as much paint thinner as paint, and that's just excessive for house painting.
Did this concern you?
Well, sure. Paint thinner is known to be flammable. That's why nuts and bolts, we keep it in a special closet, separate from our other stock. You know, having that much extra paint thinner lying around, it gets super dangerous. That's how flammable that stuff is.
Did anything else happen?
Nothing other than Darrow being short $1.75. I covered it for him, figured it was nothing much, but they really did need those funds.
Now, do you have any other interactions with Jimmie Tanks and Bertie Darrow?
Yeah, Jimmie came by the 1st of July very late at night. It ran in like my mom when she hears about a great deal, all like out of breath and complaining.
And what did Jimmie need?
Some gasoline, but we had run out, so I gave Jimmie some directions to another hardware shop.
Did Jimmie purchase anything else?
Yeah, Jimmie bought a pack of gum, then they ran off.
Does Nuts and Bolts record the purchases of their customers?
Oh, of course. We use receipts.
And Mr. Parks, would you recognize the receipts from those interactions if I showed them to you?
Well, sure. They're just what I've been telling you all day, aren't they?
Your Honor, let the record reflect that the defense will now be sharing what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 8.
Okay.
Co-counsel, can we get that up? Thank you. Now, Mr. Parks, do you recognize these as a fair and accurate copy of the receipts from your interactions with Jimmie Tanks and Bertie Darrow?
Well, let me take a look. There's a couple of them. Paint thinner. Yeah, look right there. 1 gallon paint thinner, half-gallon paint. That's way excessive. You usually have 1 gallon paint, half-gallon paint thinner, peppermint gum. Yep, all checks out.
And can you verify the sales with these receipts?
Yes, ma'am.
Did anything else happen that night?
Nope, I don't think so.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Deng, cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good evening, Mr. Parks. I'm just gonna ask you a few questions, then I'll let you get back to your vacation. Sounds good?
Oh, sure, I got all the time in the world. My flight's been delayed for 6 hours.
Let's start off by making it crystal clear, Mr. Parks. You don't like Bertie Darrow, do you?
Well, I covered their payment for them. They're a customer. don't think I hate them or anything, but no, they really reminded me of my mom, real demanding.
Is that a yes to my question, Mr. Parks? You don't like Bertie Darrow at all?
Yeah, I wouldn't say at all. I mean, sure, they get on your nerves, but I don't hate him like I don't not like him at all. I don't like him, no.
So you don't like Bertie Darrow, but you like the defendant, don't you?
Yeah, seems like a real upstanding kid.
And Mr. Parks, you're here willingly today. Is that right?
That's right.
By
Really cutting
testifying,
into my vacation.
go ahead.
Oh no, I'm just grumbling about my vacation. Don't mind me.
By testifying for the defense, you're willingly helping a person that you like. Isn't that right?
I don't know. Is what I'm saying helpful to Jimmy?
Well, by testifying for the defense, you're helping the defendant, right?
I don't know.
Well, you're not going to say anything incriminating about Mr. Tanks, are you?
Well, I mean, if I thought Jimmy did something or I knew something that you guys thought made him have done something, I'll certainly tell ya.
I want to shift gears and talk about the first time you met Mrs. Darrow.
Sure.
She wanted to buy supplies for a paint job. Is that right?
Yeah, she was repainting our house.
And just a moment ago, you mentioned that Miss Darrow bought more paint thinner than paint, right?
Yep, twice as much.
And to clarify, you don't have any experience in fire science?
Fire science, I'm not sure I follow. Fire is a science? I thought it's just fire.
Well, you're not a firefighter, are you?
I certainly hope not.
You don't have a degree in fire science.
Oh, no.
Mr.
Much
Parks,
to my mother's disappointment, no.
Mr. Parks, you don't know exactly how much flammable liquid is needed to start a fire, right?
I would have no idea. I do know that paint thin is flammable, though.
Right, Mr. Parks, you wouldn't know how much paint thinner would be needed to start a fire, do you?
No.
You don't know how much paint thinner Miss Darrow already has?
I know she had a gallon.
Right, you only know what Miss Darrow bought from your store. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you wouldn't know how much paint Miss Darrow already has at home?
Oh, yeah, sure. She might have had a lot at home. That would make sense.
Let's switch gears and talk about your relationship to Miss Tanks. You saw the defendant a few times, right?
Yeah, 2 occasions.
In particular, the second time you saw
How
her.
much did she have?
In
Huh?
particular, the second time you saw her was late at night on July 1st, 2024.
That's right. It was 10:30. We'd already closed up shop, actually. I was just there to finish a late night inventory.
Miss Tanks came because she wanted to buy some gasoline, right?
Yeah.
She didn't ask you for gasoline calmly, did she?
No.
The defendant was distressed, wasn't she?
I mean, yeah, she was sweating. Seemed like it was real important to her. Like I said, that camping trip, there's no good camping places near Willow, so it must have been a long trip for her. I imagine if it was really an important trip to her, then yeah, certainly she'd be distressed if she couldn't go. Like, I was so distressed when my flight was delayed today. Like, let me tell you, it was not pretty.
Well, Mr. Parks, she told you about that camping trip the first time you saw her. Is that right?
Yeah, she said it was gonna be during July 4th.
But she didn't mention it at all the second time you saw her?
No, she was just trying to get the gasoline. I don't know.
So you wouldn't know what the gasoline was for, would you?
Nope.
And going back, Miss Tanks looked worried, right?
Yeah, like I said, she was sweating a little bit, like my mom, out of breath, complaining, that kind of nervous.
Well, she was sweating because she desperately needed that gasoline, didn't she?
I don't know. It might have been from the fact that she ran in the door. It might have been from the fact that she's nervous. I have no idea.
Is that a yes to my question? She desperately needed that gasoline?
I thought you were asking about like how nervous she was. Yeah, she totally needed the gasoline. My bad.
And Miss Tanks needed it fast, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Miss Tanks was so desperate, in fact, that she grabbed your arm and begged you.
Yeah, she needed gasoline, ma'am.
I want to discuss what happened after the defendant begged you for gasoline. She walked out of your store, right?
Ran out, but yeah.
You didn't follow her outside, right?
Of course not. I had boxes to check.
Right. So you never saw Miss Tanks drive off to Little Hamlet, did you?
I didn't actually, because I saw her car and it looked like it was headed back to Willow. I guess she must have had a gas station back there she thought she could go to. I'm sure there's other hardware stores, something like that.
Now I want to try and see if we can confirm the defendant's alibi. You don't think Miss Tanks committed the crime, do you?
No, I don't.
And you think that because Miss Tanks couldn't get back to Willow in time, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But that's only the case if Miss Tanks actually went to Little Hamlet, right?
Well, let me think about this, because the fire started at midnight, right? Darrow's house was set on fire at midnight. That's what the news said. And then Jimmie left at 10:40, and it's an hour and a half drive with the detour. So I don't know, what is that? 12:10, 12:20, a little bit later, give or take. So, I mean, I guess it's possible. I don't think it's likely.
Well, Mr. Parks, an hour and a half was the time you took to drive back to Willow, wasn't it?
Oh no, it took me like 2.5 hours. I didn't get home till after 1, man. I guess I drive slow for a New Yorker.
Right. You had to take a detour, right?
Mm-hmm. Normally it's only a 1-hour drive, but those detours, man, they're killer.
And you also watched the fireworks, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. I even stopped a couple of times.
So
That's why it took me over 2.5 hours.
So you don't know exactly how long the drive would have taken Miss Tanks, would you?
Oh no, I wasn't in the car with her.
Right. And you never saw Jimmie's car heading toward Little Hamlet, right?
Like I said, ma'am, I think it was headed towards Willow.
Right. You don't know if Miss Tanks ever went to Little Hamlet at all, do you?
I don't think she did.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, any redirect examination, Ms. Ma?
No redirect, Your Honor. Let's have Mr. Parks get back to his vacation.
Okay, Mr. Parks, you may step down. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you guys. This really has been a pleasure to talk.
Okay, does the defense have any more witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. Before we get started, can we get a quick time check? Timekeeper, how much time is remaining for the directs?
Currently there's 12:02 remaining for directs.
All right, thank you so much, ma'am. May I proceed?
Please proceed.
Your Honor, we call Mabel Reynolds to the stand. Hello.
Good evening.
Can you tell the court your first and last name?
Of course. My name is Mabel Reynolds.
What do you do for a living, Miss Reynolds?
Well, by day, I'm an insurance inspector down at the Tilly Insurance Group. But by night, I trade my blazer for an apron attempting to cook for my two toughest critics. my 257-year-old. No one ever told me how hard parenting was, but honestly, I love it every day.
Before you became a mom, what was your education background?
Yeah, so actually, I have 2 areas of expertise. One is in fire investigation, and 2 is in structural failure investigations. And so I have a Master of Science in Fire and Safety Engineering.
What type of fire investigation do you have experience in?
So for 20 years, I investigated fires and arson-related crimes on the police force. My daughter, she calls me Sherlock Holmes, just with the fewer mysteries and more fire extinguishers.
Well, let's take a moment and investigate your involvement in this case. Why are you in court today?
So I'm here to talk about the potential financial needs of Bertie Darrow. And I also investigated whether the fire at Bertie Darrow's residence was deliberate or accidental.
What materials have you reviewed?
So I went through the state's expert report and I figured, why stop there? So then I went ahead and reviewed 4 exhibits as well.
What did you investigate?
Well, 1, I reviewed the physical evidence. 2, I conducted an inspection of Bertie Darrow's house. And 3, I conducted a mass spectrometry GC test.
Ma'am, what's your conclusion on this case?
So I concluded that this fire was more likely not caused by gasoline, and rather there was a high possibility of a natural or accidental origin that can't be ruled out.
Right, and what led you to this conclusion?
I used sufficient facts and data in a method known as the triple P method. And so by relying on my training and years of experience, I reached my conclusions to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty.
Stating for the record, we're going to be screen sharing a pre-made demonstrative by Ms. Reynolds. Yeah, can we get that up? We could just cue the Jeopardy music from here. Now, ma'am, let's take a deep dive into your method. What do those 3 P's stand for?
Right, so in my triple P method, those 3 P's stand for possibilities, property, and patterns.
Looking at that first P, what did your investigation of possibilities entail?
After my initial inspection, I first decided to interview the owner and occupant Bertie Darrow to gather some further information.
What did he tell you?
I gathered that Mr. Darrow went to bed around 9 p.m., but before he did, he heard sounds outside of his house, like water being spilled.
What happened next?
Well, he awoke at midnight to find the fire outside of his house.
All right, ma'am. Well, let's see if Miss Darrow had a need for funds. What was that second P?
It stands for property. And so I also reviewed Mr. Darrow's insurance policy and financial records to verify his claims.
Let the record reflect we're screen sharing what's been pre-marked as Exhibits 1, an insurance policy, and 3, the financial records. Now, ma'am, is it common practice for companies like these to maintain records of their clients?
Yes, to my knowledge, this is common practice, and both documents haven't changed to my knowledge.
Ma'am, what do these documents show?
Well, if we're looking at those financial records right over there, I concluded that Mr. Darrow was in debt and owed about $225,000 to the bank.
Your Honor, at this time, we offer Exhibits 1 and 3 into evidence.
Mr. Shu, any objections?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Okay, then Exhibits 1 and 3 are admitted into evidence.
Permission to publish to the jury.
Sure, go ahead.
Now, ma'am, you just mentioned that Miss Darrow was in debt. Can you tell us what that insurance policy shows us?
So if I'm looking at this right here, I concluded that Darrow would receive about $900,000, allowing me to conclude that he needed funds.
Well, let's take a look at that third P. What do the patterns mean?
I observed and tested something called burn patterns. And so this is actually really interesting to me, but burn patterns refer to distinctive marks or shapes that are left on materials like wood or metal after they've been exposed to heat.
Did you run tests?
I did. So I tested them to determine if the fire was intentionally set. And so the burn patterns, largely concentrated on those walls and the front porch, indicate the use of an ignitable liquid.
Can you tell us how these tests help you determine what that ignitable liquid was?
Right. So I did identify that the liquid was paint thinner. And to do so, I ran a mass spectrometry test. And actually, I brought a little demo for these folks just to provide a visual.
Take it away, Miss Reynolds.
Ma'am, I just want to make sure you can see this all right. My visual right here.
Yes, ma'am. It looks like a mad science lab.
Right. So essentially, a mass spectrometry test, it separates and identifies the substances in the samples. And so these two beakers represent the sample of what I gathered from the porch of the house, and then the sample I also took from the outside and the inside of the house.
All right, and how does this test work?
Right, so this is a visual for that test. And so the way that the demo works is that it detects the exact substances found in those beakers similar to the test. And so I will be dipping these strips inside each of the solutions. These are my strips.
All right.
And as
Ma'am,
you
what
can
do
see
those
right here, both of the strips turn red, showing that there's large quantities of paint thinner.
All right, ma'am. So I'm really eager to learn about this. What about something with, say, like gasoline?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if there's gasoline in the samples I took, the strip would actually turn blue. And so I'll actually give you an example of this type of solution. And so again, I'm going to dip this strip in the solution. Just wait for that. And as you can see, it'll turn blue, showing it was gasoline.
And was gasoline ever found on Miss Bertie Darrow's home?
No. Based on my mass spectrometry test and the samples that I found, it wasn't.
So, ma'am, what's your conclusion on this case?
Well, alongside the fact that Mr. Darrow was financially unstable and in debt, there could be other possibilities for the cause of the fire other than gasoline.
Thank you, ma'am. Your Honor, no further questions.
Okay, Mr. Shu, go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes, cross-examination.
Inspector, I want to ask you a few questions about your conclusions, and I would like to get back to your daughter. All right?
Of course, go right ahead.
Excellent. So I want to begin by talking about whether or not you agree with what the defense attorneys have been arguing. Now, you conducted a thorough investigation, right?
I did.
A thorough investigation means you looked at all the evidence you had available, right?
You're correct. I went through the house itself. I interviewed Bertie Darrow. And again, I conducted that mass spectrometry test. So yes, that's
and after, yes, ma'am. Now, after gathering all that evidence, you cannot conclude Miss Darrow burned down her own house, can you?
I cannot say that.
You were not able to find evidence to indicate that?
No.
Ma'am, you testified earlier that Miss Darrow needed the funds, but you cannot testify that she started the fire, can you?
Right. I'm an insurance inspector with both expertise in fire and structure failure investigations, but no, I can't point to the cause of the crime.
I want to talk about something else you cannot point out for the members of the jury. Now, you talked earlier about what fueled the fire, right?
I did.
You think it is paint thinner?
Yes, I believe it's more likely paint thinner than gasoline.
Ma'am, you are an investigator, right?
I am.
Now, a good investigator has to make sure that all the evidence is correct.
Yes, and it's reliable as well.
And ma'am, you know that paint thinner is highly volatile, right?
It is, which is what makes it an ignitable liquid.
But volatility also means it's highly likely to evaporate, isn't it?
That's correct.
You don't know when the paint thinner was put in the house?
No.
It could have been put there the day before the fire?
It could have.
But ma'am, it could also have been put there years before the fire even started.
That's true. But usually paint thinner and the way it evaporates and the nature of the actual liquid, usually it won't take super long to evaporate.
You don't know when the paint thinner was painted onto the house, do you?
I don't.
So the paint thinner could have been present, but it wasn't put there to start the fire?
Like you said, I don't know that.
It's also important for an investigator to show her work, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct.
Ma'am, you know Dr. Blaze conducted an investigation?
Yes.
And Dr. Blaze has the graph from the chromatography, doesn't he?
Yes, you're correct.
He showed the two graphs were identical?
Yes.
But ma'am, nowhere in your report did you ever include the graph for your chromatography?
I didn't. But if we do look at that ion chart that you are referencing, I just want to note that there's a lot of organic materials in our environment or other factors that could also affect those peaks. But that's a yes to your question.
Well, ma'am, you cannot show us the ion chart you just mentioned, can you?
I cannot.
You cannot even describe it to the members of the jury.
I can't.
Inspector Reynolds, all you have in today's case is your results without any of the evidence to prove it?
No, that's not correct. I do have the burn patterns and the evidence that I found within the house, as well as the insurance and financial reports from Bertie Darrow, and of course, my own mass spectrometry test. So that's a no to your question.
Well, ma'am, the spectrometry test, the burn patterns, none of them can you show to the jury right now, can you?
I can't.
You can only show the jury your results.
Yes, that's correct.
Your Honor, I have no further questions for the witness.
And Mr. Shu, Ms. Garcia, any redirect examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, please proceed.
Ma'am, Mr. Shu just asked you a lot about what you don't know. Basing from the test you ran, what do those tests show? And you know.
Right. So as an investigator and an expert, I'm taking into account the totality of the evidence. So I looked at 1, those burn patterns and the evidence I saw from the house. 2, I found that Mr. Darrow was financially unstable and in debt. And 3, from those tests I just mentioned, I found that it was more likely paint thinner than gasoline.
All right, ma'am, and looking at the totality of the evidence, what evidence points to Miss Darrow's need for funds?
So given the fact that based off of those financial
Your
records,
Honor.
Mr. Darrow
For the
was
grounds
financially
out of the scope, may I explain?
Well, hang on, Ms. Reynolds. Mr. Shu, what's the basis for your objection?
Out of the scope of the cross, may I explain?
Yes, go ahead.
Your Honor, in the cross-examination, I specifically asked the witness about whether or not she can prove Ms. Darrow started the fire. I did not address the funds at all. Therefore, Your Honor, the questioning about the funds is out of the scope of the cross.
Ms. Garcia?
Your Honor, I don't believe that is true. Since we don't have a court reporter in trial, of course, we're going to have to rely on both of our words, but Mr. Shu did go into the fact this witness investigated the funds. He literally said that because this witness investigated the funds, she didn't look into other things and she can't show the members of the jury certain things like that graph. Your Honor, he did go into that she could show the members of the jury about the funds.
Mr. Shu?
Yes, Your Honor, I did not go into the funds because my question was that she testified about the funds, but she cannot testify about who started the fire. And we are debating who started the fire here. Your Honor, because of that, further questions about the funds do not directly address who started the fire.
Yeah, but that's a different thing. You essentially conceded Ms. Garcia's position, Mr. Shu, because as long as the funds had come up, it's within the scope. So your objection is overruled. Continue, Ms. Garcia.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, ma'am, what evidence did you see to find out that Miss Darrow had a need for funds? Continue on with your answer, ma'am.
So based off of Mr. Darrow's insurance policy and the financial records, and the fact that he owed $900,000, I found that Mr. Darrow was financially unstable and did need the funds.
Thank you, ma'am. Like Mr. Shu said, I'll let you get back to your daughters. Your Honor, with that, we rest our case, Chief.
Well, I do want to allow Mr. Shu if he wants any recross-examination.
Certainly, Your Honor. My apologies.
Before we put any carts ahead of any horses, Mr. Shu, do you have any recross-examination?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, with that, the witness is excused. Okay, do you have any further witnesses for the defense?
Well, like I said, Your Honor, we rest our case in chief.
Okay, I do not know if there's a custom to have any kind of a break now, or do you both prepare to proceed with closing arguments?
Your Honor, we're ready to go if
Well, let's see what the prosecution says.
Your Honor, it's your courtroom, so it's up to you.
No, I understand that, but I'm asking what both parties prefer. You could either have a 5-minute break or no break at all.
In that case, Your Honor, the state asks for a 5-minute break.
Okay, that being said, Ms. Garcia, 5 minutes is pretty quick these days. So it is now 46 minutes after the hour. We will reconvene at 51 minutes after the hour. Or actually, it just turned 47. Go to 52 minutes after the hour. Okay?
52 minutes. All right, sounds good.
Okay, is everybody back?
Yes, Your Honor. The state is back and ready to proceed.
All right, let's see if we get the defense back.
The defense is also ready to proceed with closing statements.
Okay, very good. Mr. Shu, you have the floor.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, members of the jury, may it please the court. His fury filled the flames. Members of the jury, Miss Darrow is a woman who lost something valuable to her. She lost not only her house, not only all her belongings, but she lost an important piece of memory. And she lost all of that because the defendant allowed his fury to fuel the flames that destroyed Miss Darrow's life. Today, the defense got up and the defense tried to point their fingers at Miss Darrow. They tried to accuse her of a crime. But members of the jury, as you will later be instructed by the judge, the words of the attorneys are not evidence. Only what you hear from the witnesses are evidence in the case. And all the witnesses, all the exhibits, the facts point towards one simple fact. That is, fury fueled the flames. Members of the jury, we have a burden today. We have to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. But the key word there is reasonable. Reasonable means you need to have the evidence. Reasonable means, members of the jury, when you look at the doubt that Ms. Ma brings up later, it has to be believable, has to be something that makes sense. And the defense, they simply could not do that, members of the jury. All they brought towards you is a story spun by the attorneys that the witnesses don't even agree to. And because of that, we've charged and proven the defendant guilty of first-degree arson and attempted first-degree murder because he burned down the house of an old classmate and he tried to kill her. There were three simple facts my co-counsel asked you to remember at the beginning of the trial. I want to walk us through those facts one by one. The first fact is the fury. Members of the jury, there's no dispute today. The defendant was furious. The defendant threatened to kill Miss Darrow, and the defendant threatened her with fire. You heard all of that from the prison guard who was guarding the defendant in the prison. The defendant made good on her promise, members of the jury, and while the defense, they tried to come up here and challenge the proof, what does Ms. Huxley stand to gain by lying in court? But the only person who has something to gain is the defendant, somebody whose freedom is on the line today. Second, we asked you to consider the fuel. What started the fire? And members of the jury, this is clear as the sky. We see that the defendant had gasoline, and a seasoned firefighter came here today and he explained to you step by step through how he proved the fire was started by gasoline. The defense's star witness, Inspector Reynolds, well, she couldn't even show you a graph to back up her proof. She didn't even include a graph in her report. Members of the jury, it's not enough to simply say a result and not show any of the proof for it. She cannot prove this to you, and she cannot make a reasonable argument. Finally, members of the jury, we asked you to consider the fire, the thing that destroyed Miss Darrow's house, the thing that took away the house that meant so much to her. And that fire was started by the defendant. You heard today the defendant was spotted walking around the premises, a person with the same height, same body shape, same build as the defendant just on the day the fire started. And when the defense got up here, and when they tried to accuse Miss Darrow of somebody who needed the funds and who started the fire, well, members of the jury, their own expert denied that. When I asked Miss Reynolds about the facts, she said she can't prove the defendant needed the funds. She cannot prove Miss Darrow started the fire. A claim this not proof is not reasonable, members of the jury. And that is why we ask you to recognize the only reasonable truth in this case and find the defendant guilty because he let his fury fuel the fire. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shu. All right, let us hear the defense closing. Do we have an attorney for the defense to give the closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor. Sorry, I'm having trouble turning on my video at the moment. So give me a second to sort out that difficulty.
Okay, okay, no problem.
Your Honor, can you see me all right?
Yes, you may proceed, Ms. Ma.
Yes, Your Honor. Give me one moment to pull up a timer. All right. She needed funds, so she started a fire. The prosecution keeps telling you that Jimmie Tanks' fury fueled the flames. They were almost right. But instead of fury, funds fueled those flames. Funds that Bertie Darrow needed. Members of the jury, consider this. Imagine going to see a highly anticipated movie, one that has been marketed around a brilliant lead actor. The trailers promise a captivating performance, and you're at the edge of your seat to see how this actor will bring the story to life. But when the lights dim and the film begins, that lead actor is nowhere to be found. Instead, you're left with a series of supporting characters who merely talk about the lead without ever showing them on screen. The prosecution has talked on and on about Bertie Darrow, but you haven't seen her today, have you, members of the jury? Aren't you curious? Why didn't you see her take the stand today and tell her story? That's because her story is something that today's prosecutors doesn't want you to see. And they don't want you to see that she needed funds. They don't want you to see that she started a fire. They don't want you to see that Bertie Darrow would get almost $1 million if she won this case. They don't want you to see that they have a burden, the heaviest burden in America's legal system. And that burden is to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Jimmie Tanks caused the fire. If there is even a single possibility in your mind that Bertie Darrow, and not Jimmie Tanks, started that fire, Jimmie Tanks isn't guilty. You didn't see Miss Tanks take the stand today, but that doesn't change the fact that she's innocent until proven guilty. It's her constitutional right, the same right that every person in this courtroom has today, like you and me. But that doesn't matter, because today we've proven that Bertie Darrow burned down that house with the funds and the fire. First, the funds. Bertie Darrow needed funds. What did she have to gain? Well, $1 million. Bertie Darrow was in debt, and it was only getting worse. She was financially struggling. The hardware store owner told you that Bertie Darrow couldn't even afford to pay for the paint thinner she bought from him. But she won't have to struggle anymore if she comes out of today's trial with that grand sum of almost $1 million. She was more than $225,000 in debt. If her house burned down, she'd get a $900,000. She had 900,000 reasons to start that fire. Second, she started a fire. How did Bertie Darrow start a fire? You heard from the insurance investigator that Bertie Darrow's house was covered in paint thinner. And the store worker even told you that Darrow had purchased 4 times the paint thinner she would have needed to paint a property. And that's because she didn't want to paint her house. She wanted to soak it and then let it go up in flames. And finally, I want to ask one more question, members of the jury. Why did Miss Tanks take the fall? Miss Darrow needed someone to blame, a get out of jail free card. So who does Miss Darrow choose? Jimmie Tanks. And Bertie Darrow finds others who have a feud with Jimmie Tanks to make sure that her cover won't be blown. People like the jail guard, who testifies for the very people that are trying to put Jimmie Tanks in jail. The jail guard who could make that narc, Jimmie Tanks' life miserable. And so Miss Darrow tells a flawless story, clambering out of the window of a burning home and seeing a figure that just so resembled the man that Bertie Darrow hasn't seen for over 3 years. And now, when the house is up in flames, it's just so easy to think back on those signs. Poor Bertie Darrow couldn't have seen it coming, could she? It's a good story. Fooled the police, fooled today's prosecutors. But it's not going to fool us. Let's talk about what the state hasn't shown you today. The state has tried to make arguments that simply don't add up. They tried to pick apart the shopkeeper. Something like Miss Tanks was a person. And they tell you that the shopkeeper liked Miss Tanks. Members of the jury, liking a person isn't a crime, no matter how many times it's said. And I'm glad Mr. Cho told you our arguments as attorneys aren't evidence. Today, on cross-examination, the straight judges say that the insurance investigator didn't show you the graph that came from her test. Folks, let's think back. Did the state expert even show you his own graph? And when you go back to the deliberation room, that state didn't bring you a graph. That's a problem for the state since they have a burden. And now that I think about it, where is Bertie Darrow today? In order for the prosecution to fulfill their burden, they need not only to prove that Jimmie Tanks caused this fire, but that Bertie Darrow sustained serious bodily injuries. But members of the jury, not a single witness told you about any serious bodily injuries today. No broken limbs, no concussions, no burns. So when you go into the deliberation room today, members of the jury, on this count, you're going to check no. The law requires you because you didn't see a single piece of concrete evidence from the prosecution in today's trial. No verified statements, no photos, no graphs. That's right, members of the jury, no evidence. Miss Darrow needed funds, so she started a fire. Find Jimmie Tanks not guilty.
Thank you, Ms. Ma. Mr. Shu, is there any rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, how much time does Mr. Shu have for the rebuttal?
27 seconds, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Shu, we're listening.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense didn't want you to know what reason is. Reason is looking at a piece of evidence and using it to support an argument. But members of the jury, when they repeated over and over again that she needed funds, so she started a fire, members of the jury, no proof was ever given that she started the fire. Find the defendant guilty.
Okay, thank you. Let the judges fill out their paperwork. If everyone could turn on your video so we could see everybody, that would help to remember. And I don't think we got a real name for Mr. Parks because his video says he's just Mr. Parks.
My bad. Should I just change that on my rename, or do I just say my name?
Yeah, probably. That way we can know who you are.
Oh,
I
no,
also just
sorry
typed that
about
in the chat. I believe
Okay.
that's there you go. Well, thank you so much, Judge Noodleman, and congratulations to everybody. If just take a second, if all the judges can give me a verbal confirmation that you have submitted your ballots, we'll wait for that. And thank you for your time. Thank you for an absolutely fascinating round.
My ballot is submitted.
It's Ben, right?
Yes.
Okay, Ben, Aria, you gave me the thumbs up.
Submitted.
Mine is submitted as well, so it should be all good.
Appreciate it, appreciate it, appreciate it.
Okay, I think I submitted something, so.
Excellent, excellent. Judge Noodleman, if you can direct the other judges and of course yourself to give some verbal comments, I'll tabulate the results. I should be back within 5 minutes, probably less. But thank you so much.
Yeah, well, let me go last then. So let's go in the order, I guess, of my screen. Judge Uyenga, why don't you go first, please?
Sure. My understanding is this was a final round, so congratulations to everybody. It was a very clean round. Both sides did an excellent job in terms of presenting their case. The witnesses, having been a character witness in the past, were fun to watch, especially the experts having their own demonstrative and trying to explain scientific evidence. It was nice to have demonstratives on both sides. Attorneys, well thought out, well executed. Occasionally, you got your objections in that you got rulings on that you had to adapt to, and both sides did effective jobs in pivoting with the objections. If you have any more questions or you want more specific comments, I'll be happy to provide those. But both teams did very good jobs in their respective roles during this round.
Thank you, Judge Alton.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to say congrats everybody for making it to this point. I know it's taken a lot of hard work. I teach mock trial to middle and high school students, and so I will absolutely be showing them this tape because you all did a phenomenal job. I just want to say I really want to commend you all on your passion, your attention to detail, and some of the work you were doing. I've been coaching, nationals level college teams. I swear some of them could have been doing the same stuff and I would have been impressed. So great job.
Okay, Judge Lindsay.
Yeah, like the judges before me have said, congratulations. It's a big step to make it here, and this was a very well done round. Very high level stuff, and so it was fun to watch. Yeah, I think, people have covered it before. I'm happy to give individual feedback if you have individual questions, but witnesses, you were very good. Attorneys, you knew what you were doing. So very high level round. Good job.
And Judge Zaretti.
Hi, everyone. Like all the other judges prior to me, congrats on making it this far. Getting to the final two is a big, big accomplishment. And especially on Zoom, all of you should feel super, super proud of all the work that you've done to clearly get here. Like some of the other judges as well, this round wouldn't be a miss in a regionals or an orcs that I've been to. Especially the witnesses, you guys were all phenomenal. I think they're in my individual comments on the ballot, but these characters were excellent, and I did genuinely believe a lot of what you were saying, and that was really engaging to watch, even when it's like 1, 2 a.m. for me. So that was really, really fun. And I love the openings and closings. I think your themes were excellent, and I think they were well placed throughout. But the openings and closings, those were beautiful. And again, good job to everyone involved.
Okay, and last and least, yeah, I agree with what everybody said. I mean, I've lost track of how many things I've judged over the years. This was definitely very good. I mean, and I always start off by saying, this sort of thing is very hard to do. I also in real life, I'm also an arbitrator. So, I deal with these things the same way I'm treated. I tried a trial on Zoom, a federal trial in New York City. And I had to deal with a judge very much like me, 5 minutes, I look at it, it's 58 minutes after the hour. I do the same exact thing the way it's done to me. I also am very big on not dispersing myself in the trial. I mean, well, what do you have to say about this? And what do you have to say? And let people go back and forth. I will tell you, I agree with everything that everybody said. I was completely taken with Dr. Blaze. I thought he was terrific. I don't know if he's that stoic in real life. Okay. But I thought he was absolutely magnificent. And I probably put him as the top guy or top person. And I say that, among a field of extremely, excellent witnesses. I would have, and I got a kick out of Mr. Parks, I'll admit, but I got a little nervous because he could be a little bit too far flung. I was also in real life a juror once, and jurors, okay, they're mainly interested in what's for lunch, okay, and where they're going to go eat, okay, and then when they're going to get out of there. Okay, maybe, and what their $10 or $20 or $40 they're collecting for their day's pay. Okay. So they don't, even, me being a lawyer and sitting as a jury, I try and follow what's going on. And, I was, kind of got lost in, what your mother wanted and, and that you were a disaster and so on. And so I got a kick out of some of it. I'd be lying to you. I didn't chuckle about some of it, but it could get a little, lost. I also thought I was very taken. I don't see him here. Mr. Shu had a terrific ending. And I was, hanging on every one of his words. I thought that was a very well presented production. There was one time when I said, recross examination, where I thought he might have actually weighed in on something, because, when you get to a higher level trial, such as what you folks put on, I'm actually looking to see if there's a good redirect examination. And I like if someone's going to nail someone for whether something is within the scope of a recross or redirect. I'm paying attention, and I'm watching for that also. And I also like when you point out a rule, it's good to go to the rule. Okay, because people are very quick to say, oh, Rule 403. Rule 403 is one of the most common law school objections everybody loves to throw out. And the professors are very quick to tell you it does have to be substantially outweighed by the prejudicial effect. And, and that's something to keep in mind. So it always helps to go back to the rule. I wouldn't have been so quick to allow exhibits 1 and 3, whatever those, is that the ones? I wouldn't have been so quick to allow them into evidence. And I think that was Mr. Shu also was very gracious in letting those go in without an objection. In the world of mock trial, you do not score any points. And I'm sure our young, and I hate to sound big, but it'll sound old, but our young competitor judge folks here will tell you, okay, by saying, no objection, on an exhibit, they're not getting any points. Certainly not from this judge. Okay. And the same thing when you say, may my witness be excused? I would much rather you say, yes, Your Honor, I have a brief question on redirect. I kind of like that. Okay. It shows that you're really paying attention to what was said on cross-examination, and you want to make an effort at rehabilitating your witness who has been slightly beaten up. And that's where Dr. Blaze, was the star of the show for that, because, you couldn't beat up on him. So the lawyer who had to cross-examine Dr. Blaze there, ran into a tough time. And that to me makes a very good witness, a witness who sticks to their story, okay, a witness who takes command of the stage instead of letting the lawyer take command of the stage, because everyone wants to take command of the stage. Ask Donald Trump and Elon Musk over here, okay, everyone wants to take command of the stage, okay, so, when the witness does it and can hold on to it, that's a big to-do, but again, those exhibits, okay, another thing, I wouldn't have been so quick to allow for that house to go in, okay, and the objection to the house may not have been the prejudicial thing, but, one could have argued, was this authenticated? How do we know that the guy drew it? It was in a diary, it was in his diary, maybe somebody else drew it. Okay, but nobody, and this is not something I'm going to say to the earlier rounds, but to this round, I would say, yeah, you could have might have argued that wasn't authenticated. There was also a business record that was used, and it was never put into evidence, which I thought was interesting. I don't know why there was no objection to that. I wasn't going to object as the judge, but if I were the other lawyer, I would have objected that people were using a business record as evidence before it was even moved into evidence. When you push the buttons here on this Google thing, it submits the forms, and my short-term memory is not what it used to be. So I don't remember everything I wrote down, but you'll get the general idea. But it was an excellent trial. I mean, it really was very entertaining. You never know I'm awake at 20 after 2 in the morning here in New Jersey. And I only took a couple of sips of my energy drink. So, I mean, everything went over very, very well. You should all be very proud of yourselves. Did a terrific job. Certainly should pursue all this stuff. And if Dr. Blaze, if it doesn't work out for law school, acting is pretty lucrative if you get the right kind of gig. Okay. I always tell people that do mock trial, you got one or two things: go to law school or go for acting. There's no, and I mean, you could do both if you, want to blend it in. But the fact is that, it's not easy to be, the witnesses as much as the lawyers, but really very, very excellent job, and you should all be very proud of yourselves. And yes, I have judged orcs, and yes, this would absolutely qualify as that kind of level of an experience, and I'm very flattered, if not honored, that you guys asked me to participate. So if anyone has any questions for us, feel free. I mean, we're awake and we're here, so.
Well, I think first of all, if everybody can give a round of applause to all the competitors and our fantastic judges for staying up at 2 and 1 at night and judging. Thank you so much. And if you'd love to stay, I think we can do questions later. But I think I should probably announce some results first to make sure that we wrap up IMT December. And congratulations. It was an extremely, extremely well-battled round. I have the results, and I want to first start by announcing our MVPs. So each judge was able to vote who they thought was the best witness or the best attorney in the round. For witnesses, it was a tied decision with 2 votes each. Congratulations to, and I hope I'm pronouncing the names right, Liddy Kizirian and Sadi Chardu. Congratulations. For the attorney, it was 4 votes to Miss Christiana Garcia. Congratulations, excellent job. Before I announce the champions of IMT December, again, thank you so much to all the competitors, to all the judges for volunteering your time. Folks who are watching this, always remember that we're waiting for you to tell us when are your preferred dates for the next IMT. If you want the alumni tournament to happen in May, and it looks like it is going to happen based on how many people that have informed us that they want this to happen. So who knows? We might see Judge Newman in action here or there, judged by a student. But we'll see about that. But last but not least, this is a community that is here because of you guys. For the first time, we had a committee of students, of past competitors, both high school and AMP, to write this case. And we really can't do this without the help of the community. So we hope that IMT can cherish that we can perhaps one day have a 60-team tournament. But in order to do that, we need your help. So if you want to volunteer, if you want to help out, feel free to reach out on Slack. And we hope that we have more amazing tournaments ahead of you. It's very late for most of you, so I'll keep this brief. It was a split decision. But congratulations to the champions of IMT December, the defense team, Team Gold. Thank you all so much. I'm going to stop the recording, but obviously stay on if you have any questions, want to communicate. Fantastic, fantastic round. And again, all the judges, thank you so much.